Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting an inside look at ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and we're doing it through the eyes of someone who is right there in the thick of it.
That's right. We're drawing heavily on the insights of Dr. Pushpanathan Sundram. He was the Deputy Secretary General for the ASEAN Economic Community from 2009 to 2011. So over 30 years involved in ASEAN affairs. That's quite a perspective.
It really is. And his book, Transformative ASEAN, An Insider's Reflections, is our main source today. It's not just a history lesson. It's his firsthand account of how ASEAN evolved, its diplomacy, the policies he helped shape. Tan Sri Ajit Singh, a former ASEAN Secretary General, even praised it as a really insightful account. That tells you something.
Absolutely. And what makes Dr. Sundram's book so valuable, I think, is how he connects his personal experiences, working within the system with the big picture regional dynamic. So we'll be pulling out his key reflections on everything from economic integration, building that sense of community, to ASEAN's tricky geopolitical balancing act.
So basically, you're getting an insider's briefing on ASEAN today. We're going to unpack what really drove its changes, its strategies, from someone who was actually in the room. And clearly, there's an appetite for this kind of insight. The book sold over 300 copies already. Seems like businesses and policymakers really want to understand ASEAN from the inside out.
It makes sense. It's a complex but crucial organization.
Okay, so let's dig in. What were the founding motivations? Why did ASEAN come together back in 1967?
Well, the core driver behind the Bangkok Declaration in '67 was really a fundamental need for peace and stability. Southeast Asia had seen, quite a bit of conflict and tension. So the declaration aimed to accelerate economic growth, social progress, cultural development, basically, working together.
So it wasn't just about stopping fights. It was about building something positive together.
Exactly. And you have to give credit to the visionary foreign ministers from the founding five: Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand. They had their differences, sure, but they saw the bigger picture, the need for regional cooperation. Think of people like Adam Malik from Indonesia pushing reconciliation, or Tun Abdul Razak from Malaysia championing unity against external pressures.
It's pretty amazing they managed that, given the history.
Yeah.
What were the sort of ground rules they set early on?
Some core principles were there right from the start, and they've stuck around. Things like mutual respect for sovereignty, for territorial integrity, and, crucially, non-interference in each other's internal affairs. These got formally written down in the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation, the TAC, in 1976.
The TAC. That comes up a lot.
It does, and it's significant that, over 50 countries outside ASEAN have signed on to it now? It shows how widely those principles are accepted, at least on paper.
That's quite an endorsement. But ASEAN wasn't the very first try at this kind of thing in the region, was it?
No, you're right. There were earlier groups like ASEA, the Association of Southeast Asia, and Mafalindo, which involved Malaysia, the Philippines, and Indonesia. They fizzled out for various reasons: political disputes, ideological differences, but those experiences weren't wasted.
How so?
Well, they provided lessons, showed what pitfalls to avoid, what was needed for a more lasting framework. So ASEAN was built on slightly firmer, perhaps more realistic ground.
Right, learning from the past. So looking at its evolution, what are some key moments Dr. Sundram likely focuses on?
Well, ASEAN Vision 2020, adopted back in '97, that was a big statement of ambition, aiming for deeper integration, a bigger global role, but perhaps the most fundamental shift came with the ASEAN Charter in 2007.
And Charter, okay. That sounds important. What did that actually do?
It was transformative. It essentially changed ASEAN from a fairly loose, consensus-driven group into a rules-based organization with actual legal standing internationally. Meaning it could officially sign treaties, manage its relationships more formally. It also wrote down commitments to democracy, human rights, rule of law, which led to things like the Asian Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, AICHR.
That's a big deal, especially given that non-interference principle you mentioned earlier. How does that square?
That's the constant tension, really. The Charter also put in place mechanisms for settling disputes peacefully, and importantly, it formalized something called the Asian-X formula.
Asian-X.
Yeah, it basically allows member states that are ready to move ahead on certain initiatives, particularly economic ones, to do so, even if not everyone is on board yet. It allows for, progress at different speeds without waiting for absolute consensus on everything. It's been pretty key for economic integration.
Okay, that makes sense. A pragmatic approach. So with this structure, let's talk about the three pillars. Dr. Sundram would have seen these up close. Let's start with the political security community, APSC.
Right, the APSC. Its main success has really been in keeping the region relatively peaceful and stable through constant dialogue. You have forums like the ASEAN Regional Forum, ARF, and the EDM Plus, which bring even external powers into security discussions.
And the Asian way is part of that.
Exactly. That emphasis on consensus, consultation, non-interference, it's ASEAN's unique diplomatic style for managing relations. Sometimes criticized for being slow, but it's helped maintain harmony. We should also mention the Southeast Asia Nuclear Weapon-Free Zone Treaty from '95, a clear regional stance.
But it's not all smooth sailing. The South China Sea is a huge issue. How does APSC handle something like that?
That remains, frankly, a major challenge. You have overlapping claims, China's actions. It puts a lot of strain on ASEAN unity and its methods. There's the Declaration on Conduct, DOC, but it's not binding. Getting to a binding code of conduct, that's proving very difficult and slow. Dr. Sundram's insights on those internal debates must be fascinating.
And the non-interference principle must make it hard to deal with internal crises, like in Myanmar.
That's the crux of a major ongoing debate within ASEAN. How do you uphold non-interference when an internal situation, like the one in Myanmar, clearly has regional consequences? It's an incredibly difficult balancing act. Dr. Sundram, having been right in the middle of those discussions, probably offers some really valuable perspective on how they've tried to navigate that.
Okay, let's shift to the pillar Dr. Sundram led, the ASEAN Economic Community, the AEC. What are the big wins there?
Well, the headline achievement for the AEC is definitely the progress on economic integration through AFTA, the Asian Free Trade Area. They've eliminated something like 99% of tariffs between member states.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a huge factor in boosting intra-Asian trade, over $830 billion in 2022, maybe hitting $900 billion in 2023. Then there's the Master Plan on Asian Connectivity, MPAC.
Connectivity, like roads and internet.
Exactly. Both physical infrastructure, roads, ports, rail, and digital links. Bridging those gaps is crucial. Plus, ASEAN has numerous free trade agreements, FTAs, with major partners like China, Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand. And RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, is expected to boost things further.
So a lot of focus on trade and physical links. What about the financial side, keeping the economy stable?
Yes, financial cooperation is vital. There's the ASEAN Financial Integration Framework, AFF, working towards more integrated financial markets. And crucially, the Chiang Mai Initiative Multilateralization, CMIM, that's a regional currency swap arrangement, basically a financial safety net to help countries facing liquidity problems. It's about regional resilience.
Got it. Okay, third pillar, the ASEAN Sociocultural Community. ASCC. Maybe less flashy, but important for the people aspect.
Absolutely. The ASCC is all about building a region that's people-centered, socially responsible. So you see efforts in human development, education cooperation, poverty reduction. There are specific action plans for that. Environmental sustainability is big, too.
Like the haze issue.
Exactly. The ASEAN Agreement on Transboundary Haze Pollution is under the ASCC. Plus initiatives on renewable energy, climate action. And then there's the work on fostering a shared ASEAN identity. I think the ASEAN anthem, the flag, trying to build that sense of us.
Seems like a broad mandate. What are the challenges there?
Well, challenges remain. There's still poverty in parts of the region. Environmental issues like the haze persist, and there's a heavy reliance on fossil fuels still. And building that genuine, deep-seated ASEAN identity across such diverse cultures, that's a long-term project, you know?
Makes sense. Now, ASEAN doesn't exist in a vacuum. It deals with lots of outside powers. How does that work?
It's quite complex. ASEAN engages intensely with external partners. It has 11 formal dialogue partners, key ones like the US, China, Japan, the EU, India, Russia. Then sectoral dialogue partners, development partners. It's a wide network.
And some relationships are closer than others.
Yes, they've established comprehensive strategic partnerships, CSPs, with several key players, including China and the US. This reflects ASEAN's desire to be seen as and act as a central player in the region's architecture.
And it convenes major meetings, right?
Crucially, ASEAN is at the heart of forums like the ASEAN Plus 3 with China, Japan, South Korea, the East Asia Summit, which includes powers like the US, Russia, India, and the ASEAN Regional Forum for Security Dialogue. ASEAN centrality is the key concept there, trying to keep ASEAN in the driver's seat.
So it's trying to manage all these big players.
Right. And it has its own framework, the ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific, AOIP, trying to promote its own vision for a stable, rules-based region. But navigating the US-China rivalry, dealing with initiatives like China's Belt and Road, it requires constant, very careful diplomacy. Dr. Sundram's reflections on managing these external ties would be gold dust, I imagine.
And Dr. Sundram himself worked at the ASEAN Secretariat. What's its role in all this?
The Secretariat is basically the engine room. It supports all the meetings, coordinates the implementation of decisions, manages projects, provides policy advice. It's essential plumbing for the whole ASEAN system.
It's like a busy place.
Extremely. And like many international organizations, as Dr. Sundram probably notes, it often faces the challenge of doing more and more with, well, relatively limited resources compared to the scale of its tasks.
So looking ahead, where is ASEAN going? What's the vibe?
Well, they're currently reviewing the ASEAN Charter, which is significant. It's part of preparing for their post-2025 vision. So there's definitely a recognition that ASEAN needs to keep adapting, transforming itself to stay relevant in a world that's changing incredibly fast.
And Dr. Sundram's book captures that ongoing process.
Exactly. His Transformative ASEAN really provides that insider's context for understanding this journey past, present, and importantly, future. The strong sales suggest people recognize the value of that deep dive.
This has been incredibly useful, getting that insider feel for ASEAN through Dr. Sundram's experiences. It really highlights how complex this organization is.
It really does. His book helps you see ASEAN not just as a geopolitical bloc, but as a living institution with its own culture, its own internal dynamics. And understanding that is vital, given ASEAN represents the world's fifth largest economy and is so central to regional stability.
Absolutely. For anyone in business or policy dealing with Southeast Asia, this kind of insight, informed by someone like Dr. Sundram, feels essential. It gives you a much better handle on the currents shaping the region.
It moves beyond just the official statements.
So let me leave you, our listener, with a final thought to chew on. Given ASEAN's very particular way of doing things, consensus, non-interference, that ASEAN way, what do you think are the absolute key factors that will determine if it can maintain its success, its centrality, as the global landscape keeps shifting so dramatically?
It's a big question, but thinking about it through the lens of an insider like Dr. Sundram certainly gives you a lot to consider.